Yeah, surf the beat cause the bass is bubbling. Gotta get it in before it comes tumbling down. There's only so much time to find this kind of rhyme to express my mind. Cause everything that has ever been made will eventually...
Hello you jive turkeys and welcome to the CageCast. I'm your host Charlie Essa, and with me as always, or at least for now, is my skinny rich friend.
Hey, it's Mozz Manzor.
Hey Mozz. So, tonight we are talking about the very first episode of Netflix original series, Luke Cage. Episode 1, Season 1, Moment of Truth. This episode was directed by Paul McGugan and written by, among many other people who have credits because they work for Marvel, Chio Hodari Coker, who is the writer of the episode. So, now you were not the biggest fan of this episode, which really surprised me. For those who don't know, this series, this podcast was originally supposed to go to Zachary Hare, and I want to say, I forget who his co-host is going to be. I want to say Jesse Jackson, but I don't think that's correct. I have to look it up later. But they both said, we didn't like this series at all. And so I said, hey, if you don't like this series, I'm taking it. And so I muscled my way in. Totally railroaded those guys in classic alpha male status, and then I got my good friend Mozz here to join in, and then Mozz is like, not so much, and I'm like, what? Okay, so Mozz, let's have some criticism. What didn't speak to you about this episode?
I think it was way too stylized, and they went too far with that. I mean, it opens up, the title sequence is super, super stylized, super, like, giving you that 70s vibe. But then, again, it's sort of like set in modern times, so there's like a bit of a disconnect there. But they try to go over the top with trying to be so hip and cool and urban, but I think it goes too far and starts walking into the realm of being a caricature. You know, and I thought the dialogue was really, really simple. The characters weren't very nuanced. Even when Luke Cage was on screen in Jessica Jones, there seemed to be much more to him. There was, internal conflict. There was dialogue, happening inside his head that you could sort of see and be like, whoa, he's really struggling with things. But here he seems so one note, just, ripping one-liners. And, even his conversations with the female detective, they're just so right to the point, kind of like there's no sense in building a moment. It's like, okay, we have to have this happen, so I'll say this and you'll say this, and then we'll get there. So that's what I felt about a lot of it. It seemed very, very cartoonish, almost, in a sense.
Okay. No. Those are really good criticisms, and I actually really like those. I know that one of the things that Zach came back with was that he just didn't feel that the action was up to par with what we saw in Daredevil, which of course is much more of a kung fu thing. And I get that, because of course this is not a kung fu series. This is a superhero series, and at the moment, it's very much along the lines of, Mozz and I do the Gamma Cast on the 80s reboot Overdrive. One of the constant weaknesses of the old Incredible Hulk series is that you had this guy who was the Hulk, but he did not have an opposite villain to face. He didn't have someone who could defeat him as the Hulk. And so I get that, that is a point of contention for a lot of people in this. Now, what you're coming at is that you feel that the dialogue and the characterization is not strong, and it is both surprising, but at the same time, I do see where you're coming from. They do that very strong. One of the problems in any series and any adaptation. Mm-hmm. Is you've got this complex conversation that you have to have between the original source material and what you're trying to put it into. Now, they wanted to put it into a modern context. At the same time, they didn't want to say, hey, you know, that classic 70s Luke Cage that we all know and love, they don't want to say, hey, that don't exist no more. And so, you know, and to give you that counterbalance, you know, right now on the internets, Quentin Tarantino is making a whole stink about how if he had been put in charge, it would have been that whole it would have been even more of that 1970s caricature. So,
yep. I feel like if Tarantino had taken it over, more time would have been paid attention to the moments built in between people when they're having conversations with each other and having it sort of mean something and not just be surface, you know. That's where I think it sort of fails. They rely too heavily on the fact that it feels cool and looks cool and seems didn't give enough energy into making sure that you brought us there with you and that it felt like I didn't feel any conflict at any point. It seems like, oh, some cool stuff is happening, but there was never any moments where like, oh my God, what's going to happen next, you know?
Yeah.
Which has sort of been a hallmark of these Netflix Marvel shows. It didn't build any drama. It was just like, oh, look, a bunch of cool stuff happening. You know, it felt like a music video more than anything.
Cool. You see, now what I'm gonna go touch on now is what I think might be an inherent, because you are not watching ahead, correct?
Right. No, I just saw the first episode and that's it.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is something I found very interesting when I did a rewatch of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a while back. Now, I enjoyed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. very much. But I'm also very cognizant of all the criticisms that had come to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And when I'm doing the rewatch, I'm like, you know, I start seeing like, wait, it was the third episode that we start getting hyper-powered supervillains. Because in the third episode is when we get the Graviton episode. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that all the things that people were complaining about were there. It's just that it took too long to get to it. Now, in Netflix, you sort of circumvent that problem. Because you can tell that first episode, which does not have a lot, but it's setting up our surface characters. And essentially, to me, that's what I would say, is that first episode, we're gonna get the surface, because now we meet everyone. And when you first meet anyone, it's always on the surface. Huh. And then in each episode that comes, you're going to find out that, oh, that's, you know, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but, you know, when we find out why Pops is called Pops, it completely changes the dynamic of who Pops is. And when we, you know, and like for me, so for example, one of the most telling moments for me in this episode is when Misty Knight, who I will say right now, I just have to say this. Have you seen Hot Tub Time Machine?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember the Kristen Helene Glover? He loses his hand.
Yes.
And then they go back in time. I don't know how much you know about the comic books, but Misty Knight will eventually lose an arm.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and so every time I watch this, I just think about Kristen Helene Glover. Back in Hot Tub Time Machine. Where you're watching this and you're like, oh, okay. How's she going to lose the arm? How's she going to lose the arm? Where does the arm go? Honestly, you know, and here's the thing. I'm a comic book fan. I actually don't know how she lost the arm in the comics. As far as I know, she's always only been a one-armed cop with a robot arm. But to me, as I'm watching her with two arms, I'm just waiting for that other arm to go.
It's funny.
So what we have with Misty Knight is this very interesting aspect. And again, it's very surface. I'm going to agree with you. It is very surface. Because it's very surface. She has sex with Luke Cage, and then her partner asks her about Luke Cage. I don't know, some guy at the bar. I have no idea who he was.
Right.
And, you know, on one level, it's a perfectly reasonable response. It was a one-night stand she had with this very attractive man at the bar, you know.
Right.
You know.
Which, by the way, that scene is so unbelievably hot. God, they did so well with that scene.
Oh, yeah. And, honestly, really, you know, this is what I'm going to, you know, what they gave you in this episode, they gave you the sex scene, They do give you a great superhuman scene at the very end.
Right.
There's some great call-outs, when Pops calls Luke Cage Power Man, which of course is his old moniker. He doesn't use it anymore. Now there's another guy who uses it, but he absolutely there's a lot of shout-outs to the fans about this. But that Misty Knight, I really liked, and here's what I'm going to say. There is a depth that you get to their introduction scene that you don't get here. But that about 6 episodes later, you're going to get like, oh, that's what's going on here. That's the subtext to the scene. And when you're working in and this is this conflict of the Netflix model. And it's both its strength and its weakness. Is that its strength is that you can go through a slow episode. You can go through a weak episode, which, a lot of pilots are. One of the things about pilots is a lot of pilots don't get picked up. Because a lot of what most pilots are is establishing a universe and establishing characters. And that can take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy, and you're not going to have, per se, a strong episode. But then, you get to the next few episodes, now that we have established who everyone is, now we can explore who everyone is. And once we start exploring who everyone is, we get a lot more of what we're doing. Now, in this case, I'm not going to say whether or not I'm not going to say exactly where the click happens. Like for me, this is what I always say. I'm a Red Brown Captain America guy. I grew up in the 1970s era of Marvel Comics movies. I loved Red Brown's Captain America. It is not a good Captain America. To the point that when the 90s Matt Salinger Captain America came out, we were like, oh, this is what Captain America always should have been. And, now we look at it and go, oh, yes, that. Although I'll still say they're all better than the most recent Fantastic Four.
I didn't mind that movie. Everybody hated it. I didn't mind it.
Yeah, well, what I'll say about it. See, and this is always my thing, is that as a Marvel fan, I have to have at least some love for everything. I can't hate it 100%.
Right.
But at the same time, you know what? That movie, it was rushed. It was conflicted. They had good footage that they didn't use, which is sort of the Suicide Squad dilemma, which is that you have good footage, but it doesn't necessarily build the story. Do you want to use this good footage that is a great visual, but that doesn't add to the story? Or do you want to build more story? I just felt they didn't really build a good story there. I don't really feel that anyone's character got well developed. I don't think that
Suicide Squad?
No. I'm talking about. Suicide Squad. I think they did much better in developing most of the characters, except for poor old. What was his name? The guy whose head blew up in the first scene.
The Native American superhero guy.
Yeah. The climber. I forget. Slipknot's his name. Yeah,
right.
But in Fantastic Four, I don't feel they really developed anyone well enough.
Oh.
I don't think they explained exactly why Ben Grimm was important to go on the mission, but Sue Storm wasn't. I know they had to have someone at the thing, except they didn't actually have her at the thing to recall them either. That was the thing. It's like she only got there because she realized those idiots are doing something they shouldn't be, shouldn't they? So. And that was the thing. I don't think they had built everyone's relationships enough. And even Dr. Doom, I don't think, or Victor Von Doom, or Victor Von Dram, or however they were going to originally work him and then reworked him back to Von Doom, which is, my statement is, if you're going to make a change and go with it and call it a day. Don't try to go back and fix it again, because it's like, make a choice and stick with it. Now, that's always my complaint about Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad was supposed to be the Will Smith vehicle. And so it's supposed to be a film about Deadshot and Deadshot's character arc. But Deadshot isn't as big of a character as the Joker and Harley Quinn. So once they started shooting, and they decided to put Harley Quinn in there, and then said, well, if we have Harley, we should have a Joker. And then, well, let's expand Joker. And they did all this stuff with Joker and Harley, and then they said, oh, wait, this doesn't actually contribute in any way to the actual film that we've written. And so it's actually supposed to be about Deadshot. So all that stuff got cut out. And they made it, but they hadn't shot enough about Deadshot and Diablo. Really, it's really a film supposed to be about Deadshot and Diablo and their character arcs, and Harley Quinn is just supposed to be eye candy. But that Margot Robbie is too good of an actress just to use for eye candy, and once you do more with Margot Robbie, then you have to have a Joker, and then you get Jared Leto, and now Jared Leto is too good to just waste Jared Leto, and it's a mess.
It was a mess. I thought, in my opinion, Margot Robbie was really good, but I thought the movie was terrible. But my favorite part of that movie was Will Smith.
Yeah.
I think he's the only character that came off as genuine and felt real, and you sort of like believed that he was there as that character.
No, I'm actually inclined to agree. I actually, first off, I really like Will Smith as an actor. I actually think the man is, and just to give you, I liked Hancock.
I did too.
I even liked Wild Wild West. I actually did not think he was bad in Wild Wild West. I think that there's a lot of things that are bad about Wild Wild West, but when you say, well, what's better about Wild Wild West? Will Smith is not the thing that jumps to my mind about what's bad about Wild Wild West.
Right.
It's one of these things. You can have the greatest actors in the world, but if you have lousy writing, it doesn't do them any favors.
Lousy leadership.
Exactly.
And then it comes back to your point about making decisions and not being swayed at every turn because something didn't test well,
And to that extent, I think that's the strength of the Netflix model, is that in Netflix, it's like, okay, we're going to do 13 episodes regardless. So, you can completely fall over yourselves in the first episode. We don't care. Because we're not expecting people to remember the first episode by the 8th.
Right.
And we're actually expecting most people to sit there for 8 hours. Because apparently Netflix is based on people that have long weekends. Basically, the Netflix model is, I guess you don't have kids.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's just it. I guess you don't have kids. Because if you have kids, then it's like, okay, now you have things, Because anyway, because you can sit there for that 8 hour stretch on a Saturday if you don't have kids. And if you have a wife or a girlfriend, you can sit there on the couch with them, or they can go off and do their own thing, and you can watch your thing. Or if you are the wife or girlfriend, your husband or boyfriend can go off and do his things while you watch Luke Cage. Right. And I think if you do there, because I think that by the 8th episode, this thing is just popping. But you have to get through. You have to get through the introductions. It's
and I don't think that it won't. I don't. What I'm saying is that I don't think that. If you view it from a perspective of if I'm relaying my experience of it, I'd have to sort of give it episode by episode if we're talking about it episode by episode. So from that perspective, it's just like, I guess it was laying a lot of the groundwork, and I hope it picks up, and I think it can. But there's a lot about, the choices that they make that sort of, annoyed me. Like, that moment where he's talking about his Biggie picture on the wall, right?
Yeah.
And he says, where's your eye drawn to? The crown. And then he walks conveniently into frame right in front of it so the crown looks like it's dangling right just over his head. And it was, I don't know. I thought it was so...
You see, now what you're doing, my friend, is you're looking at what is basically some Citizen Kane artistry. And you're seeing, because someone is making it. Essentially, it's like going to the art museum and saying, hey, these pictures were painted by someone. And yes, someone painted a picture where Cottonmouth is underneath the crown. Now, I'm going to give you my take on that. You know what my take on that scene is?
What?
That's a plastic crown on Biggie's head. And the true gag of it is that these people are fighting over a plastic Burger King crown. And I think that is if you want to go one level deeper.
Interesting.
It's like, to me, that's like, because, you can look at it, it's not like they cast a gold crown for Biggie the Rear. No, they went to the costume shop and they got a nice gold painted crown with little pretty jewels in it, which are made of plastic, and they put it on his head because it's just for a freaking picture. And Biggie's like, yeah, I'm the king, man. Just like if you had gone to Burger King and gotten the crown there. Yeah, I'm the king. And that's what it is. It's a Burger King crown that everyone's fighting over. And,
that's interesting.
You know, and when you put it into context of, because, you know, they do a shout out to Fisk in this, from the Daredevil episodes, you know, and they're saying, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't think you should just, you know, that after what happened to Fisk, you know, in the first season of Daredevil, you know, we shouldn't even be seen together. And you think about that as this idea of how the villain's avarice gangs to none, how it all turns to dross. That the more you grab illegitimate, the more likely it is it's all going to fall through your fingers, especially in a world where, as we see in the first episode, you know, when the guy has all his HD and Blu-ray video of the incident, which is referring to the Chitauri invasion of New York and Avengers, you know, that this is a world of Hulks and Thors, and, you know, you're lucky you might get a Daredevil. And what we're going to be getting in this is this idea of, hey, you know what, we've all been operating on this system of, you know, there's this expanded consciousness within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is essentially that after Captain America Civil War, or not after Captain America, but after Captain America Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. collapses. And what you get in this idea, if you watch and like I said, I'm a huge Marvel nerd. So if you get into this whole deep dive on Marvel, the idea is that prior to Captain America Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. was there. And what S.H.I.E.L.D.'s job was to keep people like Luke Cage out of the mix. To keep people like Daredevil out of the mix. To keep these people who had powers and could completely upset the apple cart that Hydra was trying to deal with, as Hydra was trying to rule the world. They kept them out. They kept them hidden. They quieted down the fact that there were monsters in the earth. That there is a man thing in Florida that can open a dimensional door to a duck world. The population doesn't need to know that. And we need to make sure that anyone that knows that isn't in the mix. Once S.H.I.E.L.D. falls, no one is keeping these guys under wraps anymore. The Avengers Initiative was bad enough, but now once S.H.I.E.L.D. is not there, then some guy in red pajamas down in Hell's Kitchen takes out the guy who just took over the underworld. And, you know, when you think about a guy like Fisk and what the organization aspect of organized crime is supposed to be, it's supposed to be ordered and structured, and, you know, we keep everyone under our boot, but there's room under our boot, you know, is the idea. Which is, of course, what Hydra wants and what everyone wants. And when you take that away, once the superheroes come up, and once someone can punch you in the face, once someone can sock Hitler in the jaw, as Captain America once said, then that whole structure falls away. And what we have here is this, and what we have in this first episode, and what we have at the very end of the first episode, is Luke Cage coming to sock Hitler in the jaw. In this case, Cottonmouth, or in this case, one of Cottonmouth's men named Amos, who's going to show you why he's famous. So one imagines that maybe he's got a little extra something in his tank too, although not as much as Luke Cage. And when Amos goes to sock him in the jaw, in that reversal, what he sees is he hits the wall. And of course, you know, gives himself a compound fracture, which means that he's hitting him with some incredible power. Because it's, you know, you can break your hand hitting a brick wall. To actually give yourself a compound fracture, you had to be hitting with some strength. And what it's saying is that there are walls out there. There are people that will be the wall, that will be the defense against those who wish to oppress. And in that moment, Luke Cage is standing and saying, I'm going to make the choice to be the wall. I'm going to be the protection of this part of town. And that is what Luke Cage is sitting as, and that is what he's trying to be. And I think, you know, as we see the story progress, you know, there's a lot of good shout-outs to the series. Right after that moment, you know, Luke Cage is famous for founding Heroes for Hire. And of course, Connie says, I want to hire you. And he says, I'm not for hire. Because of course at this point he's not. Right now he isn't there yet. He has not completed his hero's journey. And we're going to get several other references to this idea of Heroes for Hire throughout. And I haven't actually finished watching the series. And I got to imagine at the end we're going to get something that's going to tell us that Heroes for Hire is going to be a thing. But I don't know yet because I haven't gotten there yet. But right now we're getting that implication, and right now we're getting that idea,
that tease.
That tease, and hopefully that's where we're going to be eventually. You know, it's hard to tell in these kind of things. It's hard to know exactly where we're going. But we'll see what happens. And for my money, I like it. And I like where it's going. And we'll see if it gets there. You know, I mean...
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad you actually were a little soft on this episode, because now we're going to have a nice counterbalance on this.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the narrative across these things, across the episodes and the episodes that we do will be that journey of whether or not, you know, I get there. Mm-hmm. I think that's what will be interesting.
Yeah. You know, and hey, don't feel bad. I never liked Arrow, and everyone always tells me how great Arrow is.
I don't like Arrow either, and I hate The Flash.
Oh, see, I like The Flash, but it's like, you know, my biggest thing with Arrow was that it was a rich guy murdering poor people. Because, you know, and like the first couple, because we did a rewatch of the first season, and the episodes I had to watch, I was like, oh my god, that is awful. Because it's like, even when he goes to catch the like big financier bad guy, he doesn't actually murder him, but he murders all his henchmen, who are just guys that got hired to be henchmen. It's not even like they were professional criminals. They were just, you know, guys that were hired to be there to, like, I guess we're bodyguards, you know? And he's sitting there murdering them straight up, and it's like, dude, not cool. But hey, white privilege. Okay. I think we've gone through this episode pretty good. I like what we've done. Mozz, if anyone would like to reach out to you, how can they do so?
You can find me on Facebook at Mozz Manzoor, Mozz. The last name is Manzoor.
Yes. And, you know, we were having a discussion earlier about how kids like the letter Z. So I know everyone's going to love Mozz Manzoor.
I feel like it has a lot of cachet.
Yeah, it does, man. It's a cool name. Don't ever doubt that is not like the coolest name you could have.
People tell me my name sounds like a supervillain. So.
See, I was actually going to say it's not quite a supervillain, because I wouldn't be afraid of Dr. Manzoor.
That's fair.
But Mozz Manzoor, it has some cachet to it, and I would imagine like you are like, if you were Mozz Manzoor, I would see you as like the fixer in a comic book universe. Like, you know, you go to Mozz and Mozz fixes it, you know.
I like the sound of that.
You know, you're not the guy you're not creating supervillain schemes, and you're not necessarily punching supervillains in the face, but, you know, someone needs some Justin Hammer level stuff. You're the guy to go to. And you want to know who got that Justin Hammer level stuff? Go to Mozz. He's going to tell you. You know? I could see Mozz Manzoor being the hub of a very extensive empire in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and of course, if you would like to reach out to me in that old-fashioned email way, you can always reach out to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet various shows for the various podcasts I do, including The Incredible Hulk, Saturdays at 7 p.m. on MeTV. If you don't have MeTV in your area, just watch it on Netflix, because that's where it is too. And you can follow along with me at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. I always sing it, Mozz, because that's branding.
I love it.
Yeah, well, you have to brand, man. It's all about branding, you know. And you might want to think about increasing your social media presence if this podcasting thing is for you, Mozz. That's all I'm telling you.
I guess so. I'm just an old head in a lot of ways, you know.
Yeah, no, I follow you, man. I resisted for a long time, and now I've got like 5 podcasts, and I'm like, when did this happen? You know, but it's fun. It's fun to do this, and I'm glad to have you with me, Mozz.
I'm having a ball,
and I hope we continue it for a good long time.
Me too.
Okay, sweet Christmas, Jive Turkeys. Oh, that was one thing I wanted to mention, because this is actually something I mentioned during the Jessica Jones series. You know, the importance of Sweet Christmas, which they did touch on in this episode, which is this idea that Luke Cage doesn't curse. And they did have him curse a little bit in Jessica Jones.
That was odd to me. I thought, it's like all of a sudden he's...
Because let me tell you something. Mozz. There are people out there that listen to my podcasts. They don't want to admit it. I know Dan Slott listens because he just recently stole one of my brilliant ideas. But I had made this point that, he says Sweet Christmas. And this is actually even before Jessica Jones came out. He says Sweet Christmas because he's a guy who uses minced oaths, which is something I do too. I do a lot of minced oaths. I often swear in faux Yiddish. I'll make up, I'll just say weird collections of things just to make it. But he says Sweet Christmas because he's a man who is so in control. He has to be so in control that he doesn't swear. And of course, if you're a guy who has diamond hard skin and can punch through walls, you've got to spend your life in control. You can't be like Superman with Lois Lane and, shooting bullets through her. You've got to be in control of your moments. And that's what Luke Cage is. He's a man who's in control of his moments, in control of his passions, and that's why he says Sweet Christmas. And actually, we've actually heard that the whole point of the reason they followed this is because, of course, they wanted to get Prince for the final episode before he passed away.
Holy cow!
But that's why they put the swear jar in it, because Prince, as you know, is a man who did not swear. He was a very religious man, he was a man very dedicated to his own path, and part of that was that you should not use foul language, and he had a swear jar in his mansion, and if you swore, you had to put money in it, and they wanted to show him, we get you, we understand you, and we've put that in here as well. So,
that's sweet.
Yeah, it's unfortunately that he passed away. Everyone says it's unfortunate that Prince passed away. I wasn't a fan, but I do understand everyone's. For me, when Gary Shandling passed away, that was my Prince. That was. Now I get what all you Prince guys were talking about. Yeah, it was a dark day.
I didn't even know Gary Shandling was dead.
Oh yeah, man. No, see, and
holy cow.
Yeah, Gary Shandling passed away. One of the many victims of 2016. Baby 2016 has a lot to answer for. Baby New Year 2016. We're coming for you. And you left Trump alive, so
Speaking of which, we're about to have a pretty entertaining debate in a little bit.
Yeah, and we should probably go watch that as our civic duty as Americans. Okay. So, Mozz, let's call it a night. It's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.
Sounds like a plan. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Sweet Christmas.
Sweet Christmas.